My name is Margaret, and there are words a mother carries that never make it into conversation. Not because she doesn't want to say them, but because motherhood teaches you to choose peace over proving your pain. You learn to swallow certain feelings so your children can keep growing without guilt. You learn to smile when your heart is heavy because you don't want your love to feel like a burden. That is why one evening I wrote a letter to my children and never sent it. It was a quiet night, the kind where the whole house feels like it's holding its breath. The lamp on my table cast a warm circle of light, and everything outside that circle disappeared into shadow. I had already washed the dishes, folded the blanket on the couch, and done all the small rituals that help older people feel settled. But even after the routine was finished, I couldn't shake the feeling inside my chest. It felt like a weight. Not sharp, not sudden, the kind of weight that builds slowly over years of being strong. I sat in my chair by the window and watched the dark street outside. Cars passed occasionally, their headlights sliding across the walls like quiet reminders that other lives were moving forward. I didn't feel jealous of those lives. I simply felt separate, like a woman watching the world from the outside. Earlier that day, my daughter had called. The call wasn't unkind, it was normal. She asked if I was eating well, if I needed anything. She sounded tired, distracted. I could hear her rushing through tasks while speaking to me, like my voice was something she was fitting into the spaces of her day. And again, I understood. Life is heavy for young families. Responsibility eats time quickly. Still, when the call ended, I stared at my phone and felt a small ache. Not because she didn't love me, but because motherhood changes its shape as children grow. When they are small, they cling to you. When they are grown, they visit you, and sometimes even visits feel hurried. You become something they love deeply, but don't always have time to hold. That night, the ache returned in full. I walked to my drawer and pulled out paper, an envelope, and a pen. I don't know why I did it. Perhaps my heart needed a place to go. Perhaps my feelings were too full for silence. At 72, you become good at living quietly, but you still have a heart that needs release. I sat down at the table and stared at the blank page. The whiteness of it felt intimidating. It was like standing at the edge of a truth you've avoided for years. My hand hovered above the page. Then I started writing. My dear children. The words looked simple and ordinary, but they carried decades behind them. I paused, listening to the faint ticking of the clock, and suddenly I felt my throat tighten. What do I say? Do I say I miss you? Do I say I sometimes feel forgotten? Do I say I feel lonely even though I'm surrounded by love? A mother doesn't want to accuse her children of failing her. A mother doesn't want her love to become a complaint. So I took a deep breath and began carefully, the way you do when you are holding something fragile. I wrote about love first. I wrote, I am proud of you. I wrote, I know you are busy. I wrote, I see how hard you are trying. Then I wrote the truth beneath those gentle words. I wrote, sometimes I just wish you would sit with me a little longer. That sentence made tears rise in my eyes. I blinked them back and continued. Sometimes I don't need help. I don't need things. I don't need money. I just need time. I need your presence. I need the comfort of your voice without the rush. As soon as I wrote it, I felt guilty, because mothers are trained to feel guilty for wanting anything. I wrote again quickly, as if to soften it. I know you love me, I never doubt that, but some days love feels far away when it's only delivered through short calls and quick visits. My hand trembled slightly, and I paused to steady it, not only because of age, but because of emotion. It is strange how writing can make hidden feelings become real. Once the words are on paper, you can't pretend they exist. I kept going. I wrote about the things I never said when they were young, the fear I carried as a mother, the nights I lay awake listening for their breathing, the way I pushed my own exhaustion aside because their needs were louder, the way I sometimes cried in the bathroom so they wouldn't see it, the way I smiled through difficult years because I wanted their childhood to feel safe. I wrote, I did my best, and I hope it was enough. That sentence broke something open inside me, because every mother, no matter how loving, carries that question, was I enough? I stared at the words and let tears fall, quiet, steady tears. I didn't wipe them quickly, I let them exist, because this letter wasn't for anyone else, it was for my heart. Then I wrote something I had never admitted, not even to myself. Sometimes I feel invisible now. It felt selfish to write, but it was honest, and honesty was the whole reason the pen was in my hand. I wrote, I spent most of my life being needed, and now I don't always know who I am when I'm not needed. I paused again. The room was silent except for the ticking clock. The lamplight warmed my paper. My hands, wrinkled, lived-in hands, held the pen like they were holding my truth. I continued writing in a softer tone. I wrote, I want you to live your lives fully. I want you to laugh. I want you to enjoy your youth, your strength, your busy, beautiful days. Then I wrote the quiet request hidden underneath. But please remember me sometimes, not as a responsibility, but as your mother. When I finished that sentence, my chest felt so full I had to stop. I placed the pen down and held my hands together. My breath shook slightly as I stared at the page. This letter was love, but it was also longing, and I didn't know what to do with it yet. Because once the truth is written down, it becomes heavier in a different way. It is no longer a feeling drifting inside your chest. It is a sentence. It is proof. It is something you could hand to someone else. And that was exactly what frightened me. I stared at the letter for a long time, my eyes moving slowly across the lines. I reread the words again and again, as if reading them might soften them, but they stayed the same, gentle, honest, full of love, full of longing. The kind of letter a mother writes when she has held too much inside for too long. I leaned back in my chair and listened to the quiet house. The clock ticked steadily, like time itself was reminding me that it keeps moving whether we speak our hearts or not. I thought about my children receiving this letter. I imagined my daughter reading it first. I imagined her face tightening with guilt, her shoulders dropping. My daughter is a good woman. She carries a tender heart. She would not read my words with anger. She would read them with pain. She would blame herself. She would start calling more, visiting more, forcing herself into time she doesn't always have, not because she wants to, but because she feels she must. And I didn't want my love to become an obligation. Then I imagined my son reading it. He is kind, too, but he has always been the type to hide emotions under silence. I pictured him reading my words quickly, jaw tight, then putting the paper down without knowing what to say. He might call me and try to sound normal, or he might avoid the conversation completely. He might feel ashamed for not knowing how to respond. And what would that solve? It would place my feelings like a heavy stone in their hands. I didn't want that. So I sat there, the letter resting on the table, and I felt my heart pulling in two directions. One direction was truth, the desire to be seen, to be heard, to finally say what I had carried for years. The other direction was motherhood, the instinct to protect my children from pain, even if that pain belonged to me. People don't always understand how deep that instinct runs. A mother can be lonely and still worry more about her children's guilt than her own emptiness. I reached for the letter and read it again, but this time I noticed something else. I noticed how kind my words were. I hadn't accused them. I hadn't demanded anything. I hadn't written in anger. Even in my sadness, I had written with love. I had written like a mother who still wanted her children to feel safe. And that realization made me emotional in a new way, because it reminded me of who I am at my core. I am not the kind of woman who throws pain at the people she loves. I am the kind of woman who tries to turn pain into softness. Sometimes that is strength. Sometimes it is silence. I took a slow breath and continued writing, not because I wanted to add guilt, but because I wanted to add clarity. I wanted my children to know what was truly inside my heart. I wrote, "Please don't think I'm blaming you. I'm not. I'm only telling you what my heart feels sometimes, and my heart feels this because I love you deeply." I paused after writing that. The words felt like a hand reaching outward but not grabbing, a gentle offering, not a demand. Then I wrote something else, something I had never admitted before. I wrote, "Sometimes I miss the version of you that needed me." That sentence surprised me even as I wrote it, because it sounds selfish on the surface, like a mother who wants her children small again. But it wasn't that. It was grief. The grief of watching a relationship change. The grief of realizing that being needed gave me a sense of identity that I didn't realize I depended on. When they were little, my days were full. My exhaustion was constant, but so was my purpose. I could see my importance in the way they reached for me, in the way they called my name, in the way they needed comfort and food and guidance. I complained sometimes, yes, every mother does, but deep down I was anchored. Now they are grown, and that is beautiful. It is what I wanted. It is what I worked for. But it is also quiet, and quiet sometimes feels like disappearing. I placed my pen down and held my hands together again. I stared at the letter until the words blurred slightly from tears. Then I stood up and walked to the bookshelf where my photo albums lived. I pulled one out and sat back at the table. The album was heavy. Life feels heavy when it is captured in pages. I opened it carefully. There they were. My children as babies, small faces, bright eyes, my daughter in pigtails, my son with scraped knees, birthday parties, messy cakes, laughter, family trips, ordinary days that felt like nothing at the time, but now felt priceless. I traced one photograph lightly with my finger, my daughter asleep on my shoulder. I remembered her breath felt warm against my neck. I remembered the smell of baby shampoo. I remembered the way her tiny hand held my shirt as if she feared I would vanish. I swallowed hard. Back then, I thought those days would last forever. I flipped another page, my son standing proudly on his first day of school. He looked nervous, but he was pretending to be brave. I remembered kneeling to straighten his collar. I remembered whispering, "You can do it," and watching him walk away. I remembered how my heart broke in small pieces every time they took one more step away from me. Because that's the truth of motherhood. Every step forward they take is both joy and loss. And now, at 72, I felt that truth in full. My children didn't forget me. They simply grew. They grew into lives that needed them the way I once needed them. They grew into responsibilities, bills, schedules, stress. They grew into adults who sometimes forget to slow down. And I understood that. I truly did. But understanding doesn't always stop the ache. I closed the album slowly and looked at my letter again. I felt tenderness toward myself. I felt tenderness toward them. And suddenly I realized what this letter was really doing. It wasn't only speaking to my children, it was speaking to me. It was letting me admit that I am still a mother even in silence, that my love doesn't stop just because the house is quiet, that my longing is not weakness, it is proof of how deeply I loved. I folded the letter carefully, smoothing the edges, placing it inside the envelope. My hands trembled slightly, not from age alone, but from emotion. Then I held the sealed envelope in my palm. It felt like holding my own heart. And the question remained, do I send it? And I held the envelope as if it were fragile glass. It wasn't just paper. It was everything I had swallowed over the years. All the love that didn't fit into quick phone calls. All the longing that didn't belong in polite conversation. All the emotions that felt too complicated to say out loud. I sat there staring at it, and I realized I was afraid of two things at once. I was afraid they would feel guilty, and I was afraid they would not understand. Guilt would hurt them. Lack of understanding would hurt me. Either way, sending the letter felt like opening a door that could never be closed again. So I stood up slowly, walked to the window, and looked outside. The night street was quiet. The world beyond my home was still moving in its own rhythm, unaware of the storm inside my chest. That is the strange thing about private pain. It can be enormous inside you while the world stays ordinary. I returned to the table, set the envelope down, and opened my diary. Not the diary from youth, but a small notebook I keep now, where I sometimes write thoughts that I don't want to lose. I wrote one sentence. A mother's love is often quiet. Then I wrote another. But quiet love is still love. Writing those sentences made me realize something important. The letter didn't need to be sent to be real. My feelings didn't need an audience to be valid. And perhaps for this moment in my life, my role was not to demand more love, but to understand how love changes shape. I placed the envelope in my drawer beside a ribbon and a small old key, the kind of object you keep without knowing why. I pushed the drawer closed gently, like closing the lid on something sacred. I didn't throw the letter away. I didn't destroy it, because it wasn't wrong. It was simply private. In the days that followed, something unexpected happened inside me. The heaviness didn't disappear completely, but it softened. It was as if writing the letter drained poison from a wound. The pain was still there, but it no longer burned the same way. And I started doing something different. Instead of waiting for my children to guess what I needed, I began offering small invitations. Not big requests, not guilt-heavy messages, just gentle openings. One afternoon, I called my daughter and said, "Would you like to come by for tea this weekend? No rush, only if you can." There was a pause, and then her voice warmed. "I'd love to, Mom," she said. "I miss you." Those words wrapped around my heart softly. On another day, I messaged my son and told him I had made a small dessert and thought of him. He replied later with a short message, "Love you, Mom. I'll come soon." Not perfect, not long, but real. And then the weekend came.
My daughter arrived first. She came in with groceries she didn't need to bring, as if care is something she must deliver physically. She hugged me longer than usual, and I felt her arms tighten slightly around my shoulders, as if she needed the hug too. We sat in the living room and drank tea, and I noticed something I had been missing. My daughter was tired. Not just busy, tired in her bones. Her eyes carried stress, her shoulders held tension, her hands moved quickly as if she was always trying to stay ahead of something invisible. I looked at her and realized she wasn't forgetting me because she didn't care. She was forgetting herself, too. She smiled at me and asked, "How have you been?" And for the first time, I didn't say the automatic, "I'm fine." I said softly, "Some days are quiet." She nodded slowly, her eyes softening. "I know," she said. "I'm sorry I haven't been here as much." I could have taken that moment and poured the letter in spoken form. I could have told her everything. I could have opened the drawer and handed her the envelope and said, "Read this." But I didn't. Instead, I reached across the table and took her hand. Her hand was younger than mine, smoother, faster, but it trembled slightly too. Not from age, from the pressure of life. I told her gently, "It's all right. I don't need perfection from you. I just need you to remember that I'm still here." Her eyes filled with tears immediately. "I do remember," she whispered, and in that moment I realized something beautiful. Sometimes our children do not need our pain. They need our honesty, but delivered with love. They need our warmth more than our sadness. That day, my daughter stayed longer. We laughed softly. We looked through old photos. She told me stories about her children. We talked about ordinary things, grocery prices, weather, neighbors. But underneath the ordinary conversation, there was something more important happening. Connection. Not forced, not guilty, chosen. After she left, I sat again with tea and felt my chest loosen. The quiet house didn't feel as sharp. It felt like a home again, not a waiting room. Later that week, my son came too. He didn't talk much at first, as usual, but he helped me fix a small thing in the kitchen, and when he finished, he stood there for a moment and looked at me. "You okay, Mom?" he asked. I nodded. "I'm okay," I said. "Just getting older." He smiled faintly. "You're still you," he said. And that sentence felt like a gentle blessing. After he left, I opened the drawer where I had placed the envelope. I held it for a moment, then set it back down. I understood something now. The letter was never meant to be sent. It was meant to free my heart. It was meant to help me stop expecting my children to read my mind. It was meant to remind me that love changes shape, but it doesn't disappear. If you are listening to my story right now, I want you to remember this. Sometimes the words you never send are the words that save you. Writing them doesn't mean you are weak. It means you are human. It means your heart needed a place to breathe. And sometimes, after you write them, you don't need to send them at all, because you find a softer way, a calmer way, a way that keeps love gentle. That night, I sat by my window, warm light on my silver hair, and I felt peace in my chest. The envelope stayed in the drawer, but my heart felt lighter than it had in a long time, because I finally understood something simple. A mother's love doesn't need to be loud to be real, and neither does her healing.